you Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We would like to invite you to our conference today. We are glad to see all of you, and I would like to say thank you for your participation and your personal time. 2020 changed the world. It may look like we are getting adjusted to the new conditions, but in fact we are just adjusting to permanent changes that change the world. And on top of that, we have a lot of changes at local level. But we are bankers, we are not looking for the past, we are looking for the future, and that's why we would like to share with you our ideas how Ukraine will go through the post-COVID recovery. To help us with this task, we invited two bright speakers for today's conference, and I would like to introduce and to say thanks to Vladislav Rashkovan, alternate executive director of the IMF board, and Sergei Yagnich, our head of investment banking and chief economist. They prepared very interesting presentations for us. Now I would like to say a couple of words about technical details and agenda for today's meeting. On our events, we invite you to ask questions to our speakers, and today we are going to have two Q&A sessions after each of the presentations. So you can ask questions directly from YouTube chat, and please don't hesitate to contact technical support if you experience these troubles during broadcast. Also, you can use a number which is on the video screen and directly type from the chart from the landing page you came from. So let us start. And I am happy to invite Chairman of the Management Board of Bank BNP Paribas Group, Laurent Dupuche.
Dear clients and partners, I'm very happy today to welcome you on this online conference. Of course, we would have loved to organize it on site, but it's difficult because the times are difficult because of this crisis. I know that we are all missing personal contacts and interactions. Maybe in the future we will be able to organize again on site, but thanks to everybody for your presence and your participation. The subject of today is very ambitious, Dmitro told us. And for this, we have two guests, and many thanks to them because they accepted, they agreed to be online with us. But before we give the floor to our guests, and I would like maybe to say a few words. As you may probably know, BNP Paribas has been named in 2020 as the best corporate bank in the world. And frankly speaking, for all of us, members of this group, it's very important nowadays to have such a recognition. It's a challenge also. To be one of the main banks, the main bank of our corporate customers, that means we need to be very close to them. That means we need to be even closer to them, to you, our clients, in order for us to help you in your daily operations, to help you in your growth and your developments. But as you realize, today the world is changing. It's changing faster and faster. It's even accelerating because of kind of urgency, because of climate concern, because of energy transitions, because of technological innovations, and of course, because of this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, this unprecedented event. What does it mean for us? That means we need, as a bank, as a CROCI bank, BNP Paribas Group, we need to adapt ourselves in order to be able to propose solutions, innovative solutions, to all of our customers and corporate customers. And of course, solutions with a positive impact. It's very important for us, a positive impact for you and through you for the economy and for the society. To do this, we aim at always improving the customer experience, also upgrading our innovative digital solutions, like for example, CROCI Bank Business. But of course, at the same time, and it's one of the big commitments we have, and it is important for me to tell you about this commitment. Our commitment is to put at the heart of our agenda sustainable development goals and our CSR policies. Our ambitions to have, through our daily operations, a positive impact on your business, through you on the economy and on the society is very, very important. I will not be longer because it's important now to give the floor to our special guest. Thank you very much, Mr. Roshkovan, to be with us today, and it's a great honor. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurent, and thanks for invitation. I have never been the customer of CROCI Bank, but I keep the relations with the excellent relations with the bank the level of management. And in the last years, I spoke to the employees, to your annual meetings of staff. Now I'm happy to speak with the clients. And congratulations for a global award as the best corporate bank. I think it's well deserved. I was asked to speak about the post-COVID economy, and truly saying I'm a little bit stuck, because it's a pretty complicated topic, and I truly saying don't have any slides today. First, because I don't know what means the post-COVID. It's the level of uncertainty now is very high, and it depends on many factors. Therefore, we don't know when the post-COVID will happen. The second, as you know, I work in IMF, and IMF twice per year issues the World Economic Outlook, and the next outlook will be just in 2 weeks. As a member of the IMF Executive Board, I have seen already the several drafts of this document, and unfortunately, I cannot disclose any figures or even highlight on the development of this report, and therefore I cannot show any graphs to you. If we would have organized this event maybe in a month, it would be much easier for me to be more frank with these figures. And moreover, I'm not planning to speak about the forecast of the exchange rate, hryvnia exchange rate in Ukraine, or when the IMF will give money to Ukraine. And so if you just wait for these, I think you have like a next 40 minutes. You can spend it for something else. And another disclaimer, in the last months, several months, I already discussed several times the potential effect of COVID for the global economy. And if you have time and wish, I would recommend to watch several of my recent discussions. One was with Sergei Guriev, former EBRD chief economist. Now one with Yuri Gorodnichenko, one of the best, the top young economist in the world, and now one with Deloitte, when we discussed also how it affects Ukraine. So if you unite probably these three events, you will have a good view on what not only myself but also the fun things about the COVID. Moreover, Sergei has an excellent presentation after my speech, and I fully agree with all his conclusions. So I mean, you can hear him. But before starting, I would say that I want to mention there was one Ukrainian businessman who recently in Facebook wrote that if you were not ready for COVID in March, you were like an average businessman. But if you are not ready now, you're just an idiot. And it's I mean, I tend to agree with this conclusion, but not just because even in March I was saying that the quarantine, the lockdown, the epidemic is not the question of 2 months. And not only because 6 months already passed and this was enough period to fine-tune your internal processes. The issue is that according to the global analysis, we can make an opinion that the COVID so far has not changed any global trend which did not exist before COVID. And this is very much important. Maybe with a small, comment that the 6 feet economy and the low touch economy, definitely something new for us. But the researchers of neurobiologists say that people really don't like it and they are not ready to take it in the future. Therefore, we think that will not be embedded in the behaviors of the customers. Really, people don't like it. They want to hug, they want to touch, they want to use, to feel on the fingertips the goods. And by the way, this is a problem today of the pandemics. But again, the COVID so far has not changed any global trend. What does it say? This says that if you were not ready for these trends before the crisis, which means in March, it will be very difficult for you to be in business because you need to follow the trends. I mean, you need to anticipate the trends, but you need at least to follow the trends. And this is my, probably the first advice. As you know, that the trends could be the annual trends. It could be, more mid-term or long-term trends, the length is not so important. I mean, it's important that you cannot avoid looking at the trends. And I do hope that in your companies, you discuss these trends in your industries and in the global economy and economy. And if you don't do it, I would really recommend you to do it systemically. And as you know, the trends could be the technological. And for example, I mean, the fact that we speak with you today, via Zoom is not only the praise for Zoom, but also it's a, I mean, good visualization of the trend on connectivity. And yes, if you cannot work online, both with your customers, with your suppliers, with your employees now, when you are working from home, many of the companies working from home, so there is no much future in your business. But as you understand, the online shopping, online trading, is not enough to be in business and feeling very well in business. You know that more and more devices, they are now uniting to the one network or in the networks. And I'm sure many of your businesses, I know there are many companies in Ukraine which already implement the concepts of the fourth industrial revolution. And you know that very soon your kettles, cars, pens, glasses, clothes, all of these will be connected between each other. And moreover, many of these devices will be connected even without your noticing. So you will not see it, you will not consider it, you will not think about that. And it's expected that about 50% of the global internet traffic will be utilized by devices from Internet of Things and not by people. Even if, like in 10 years period or in 5 year period, the number of people, the percentage of people in the world which will have an access to internet will increase from 50 to 80%, which means that if you are in internet, if you are in online business, I mean, your business definitely will grow. And so 80% of people will be, this will be about 6.4 billion people. If you work globally, if you are members of the global companies, this is definitely a big push for your business and a big opportunity. And I do hope you know in Ukraine how to earn money from this. And if you don't know, I mean, maybe it's time to start thinking about that after today's event, and maybe ask the Ukraine Bank. I'm sure the specialists can help you with these kind of advices, both in investment banking and corporate banking. Another, big technological trend which we observe and which has been in place before COVID and which is just in the COVID period is just increasing, is the development of artificial intelligence or further development of AI. The AI is not only funny stuff, it's not only manages cars or will be incorporated to the well-designed security systems and including the cybersecurity. It will be also included in the credit decisions of the banks. So you will be definitely see this more and more in the banks like BNP Paribas, and I don't know how far now this developed in Ukraine. But the funny developments of Alexa, Alisa, Cortana, Siri led to the cases that in some corporations on the East, in China, but not in Singapore, the AI formally became a member of the supervisory boards or board of directors of the companies with advisory vote, which means that algorithms start taking more and more role in the decisions which historically have been a part of the human, human life. And it's very interesting to understand if your companies, being local and global, if they're ready for this. And I mean, are you ready if these systems will appear with your competitors? So that when they will get the much bigger competitive advantage against you? Think about that. And don't believe that AI is just marketing, because it's much bigger. I run the Telegram channels, which names 6 articles, where there are several authors speak about AI, and you can subscribe and read for that. But there are 3 other big important technological trends. One is huge increasing of the cloud capacity of the computers, which definitely leads to the much faster arithmetics, which means there will be much faster, the processing of data. Second, the data itself, which is becoming a food for the AI and for the algorithm, including the big data and small data, is exponentially growing. And third is the methods of machine learning, and are substantially improving, which helps AI to work much better with this data. So so my advice, try to collect data, small data, big data, whatever business you do, try to collect it. Believe me, it's not so easy, including all the legal, ethical issues, but you should do it, because in future, your business will be evaluated not by number of hectares of land or by EBITDA, but about the number and quality of the data your business generates or your customers generate, and which you can collect. Believe me, this will be a big part of the valuations in the past. We can discuss the technological trends, which I think is a very fascinating topic, and you just need to understand that the technological innovations, which means like a 3D printing, 4D printing, AI, Internet of Things, neural networks, robots, quantum computing, will affect all the businesses, and your business cannot be just staying aside, or it will be just a side, of the main streamline of the business. And I do hope your business has a strategy in this world. And again, I want to reiterate that all these trends existed before COVID, and COVID just substantially strengthened them. But technological trends are not only one type of trends you need to follow and anticipate. There are climate trends. We know that in 10 years period, the average temperature in the world will increase by like 1.5%. It seems as of today that this can be avoided only if everybody in the world will do the best to change their behavior. And since we know it doesn't happen, so this is a fact, this is a trend which we cannot change as of now. We just need to understand what to do with that. There are demographic trends. Like in 10 years time, there will be 1 billion more people in the world. And thanks God, the pandemics will not change it, And again, 1 billion people more, this means 1 billion more consumers, starting from the childhood and later through education, for the supply, from school supplies, from clothes, for food. This is an opportunity for a business. Another trend is that about 600, McKinsey was saying already several years ago that about 600 cities in the world already in 5 years will generate about 60% of the global GDP. Unfortunately, Kyiv is not among these 600 cities. And the globalization is there. I'm speaking from US, you sit now in Kyiv, and some of your headquarters in different parts of the world. So all of these trends, exist. They existed before the pandemic. And all of them will lead that in 10 years time, the world will look differently. And I do hope you as a CFOs, you as the CEOs of the companies, you're ready for it. And your business models are ready for these changes. As Laurent said, the uncertainty is very huge. But there is one certainty, is that the world will be different. And the world changing, but I didn't say it will change to better. There are many things which we can observe now, and again, which are just by COVID substantially strengthened these kind of trends, and they also affected these negative things. They also affecting your business, and just few of them. Democracy. Democracy was under attack of populists or autocrats in many countries, even before the COVID. But during the COVID, there are many, the state or different states start saying that they want to control more and more, including business areas. I think we just need to not only to observe it, but to be ready to oppose to that, because I'm definitely more for the liberal economy and not for the state economy. And in general, also the liberal idea, the freedom of speech, freedom of entrepreneurship, competition. I mean, all of this is under the permanent attack. As you know, the president of our north neighbor, said to Financial Times last year that liberal idea is dead, and the state capitalism is growing in many countries. I fully against of that, and I do everything possible to avoid this. I hope you also do it. I said about the globalization. The globalization, which is also freedom of relocation in the world, freedom of you can work in different parts of the world. There is immigration, there is a global cooperation, global value chains, the multilateral cooperation of the United Nations, IMF, WTO, WHO. All of these, currently under the attack by the populists and even nationalists. You remember when in March, when there was a discussion on the new measures, on the quarantine measures, the nationalists first came out and said, let's close the borders. We don't need the migrants. We need to protect our own people. And this concept, like America first, is also the concept of the protectionism and the pretty big threat for the multilateral world. I said to you about about the data, but the privacy, also your privacy, your company privacy, your personal privacy, is under the threat in the current circumstances, because you leave your digital footprint everywhere. Again, connectivity. We talk to you now with through Zoom. You have probably some of your discussion now much more with customers and employees by online. But you understand that you became much more threatened by the cyber risks currently, which to be also taken very seriously. And I do hope you have a special units in your organizations which take it on a much different level today, when we have much more issues, discussions around the internet and not personally during the business trips. And we need to understand that this data, this information which we can to share online, also personally through social networks and others, can be received by the bad guys, including the autocrats, including the some regimes which don't want to have, as I said, a liberal world. And the current world is very good for the. Mr. Orwell in his book 1984 would be, really astonished to see how much can be done today with this kind of big brother concept. So we lived with you last 30-40 years. In a completely different life than can happen after the or post-COVID world, and because the world may change, being under the trends which existed even before COVID, but COVID just strengthened them. So the world can be less democratic, less free. There will be much more control from the state, from the surveillance from the state, and the state may use your data against you. Do we want to live in this kind of world? I think from you as businessmen, global businessmen, local businessmen in Ukraine, depends very much, because you are building the world, and that the good guys unfortunately gather together much less than bad guys, and the bad guys they have the targets much beyond the just profit of corporations. They just want to control the future of the people, and the world, and to do it forever. So my advice to you is, when you try to implement the technological trends, when you develop your business in order to improve the life of people, be on the side of good people, I mean, try not to be on the side of the bad people. I mean, try to make the world better and let it be a part of your corporate social responsibility. Yeah. So, I mean, we can discuss how all of these affects also the, you know, the labor market and you know, the future of jobs for sure. And I'm sure you look at these. The important element is that despite of the development of the AI and robots, people will be needed, and you as employers will make still will continue making the demand for the new employees. Yes, it will be different. There will be different skills needed, different professions than you even have today in your business, and you need to think about that. The problem is that the current system of education in Ukraine, unfortunately, is not up to speed to meet the requirements of the future labor market and the future demand from the corporations. And I speak very often with Ukrainian businessmen who actually say that they have to re-educate the recent graduates from universities or even create their own corporate universities or special programs in universities, you know, for agriculture or for other industries, where they prepare the specialists from themselves. I mean, and this is not only in the like middle managers, it's not business schools. I'm speaking about the preparing the teachers for the private schools or translators, interpreters for the publishing houses, which want to do the qualitative translation of the Western or Eastern books, and even the people who work on the new devices on the factories. You know, I think this is important. You need to think, and maybe as a single company, it will be very hard for you to change these. But maybe as a group of people, you can think, a group of companies, you can think and to do some kind of gathering or association or partnership, which could create some educational programs for your industries or for your companies. Think about that, and maybe again, maybe the bank can help you somehow to facilitate this discussion, you know, or maybe even training your people. You know, so coming back to COVID immediate results, you know, in my talk with Sergey Guriev, former EBRD chief economist and one of the smartest people I know, and we are friends for many years, I spoke about the concept of VUCA, you know, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, you know. And VUCA is not a new term, you know, but in the period of COVID, this is just substantially increasing. The uncertainty and the volatility is substantially increasing. And, you know, I said in the beginning that we don't know what post-COVID means. As of today, as you know, there are about 30 million people, you know, infected or were infected by COVID, and there is already the second wave of pandemics, about which the epidemiologists were saying back in February and March, and they were saying that it will be linked with a global relaxation of the quarantine measures and opening of the borders. Yes, it happened exactly like this. So, I mean, this is a little bit threatens because according to the MIT research of epidemiologists of MIT, the number of infected might reach 600 million by spring of next year. And this is what one every 13th in the world. And for sure, if the new vaccine will appear, or when it will appear, this figure might be less. The problem is when we speak with epidemiologists, they say that the vaccine will be not earlier than next summer. And in general, the pandemics might last until the end of 2022. Again, this is not a 2-month topic. I mean, it will take long. And therefore, I hope you're ready. And again, as your businesses, you can help to decrease the effects of the pandemics. You can affect your clients, your customers, if they will be much more caring about the 6-feet economy and the low-touch economy. This figure of the infected will be much lower. And unfortunately, and Sergei will show you on his slides, you will see that Ukraine is not in the best group now in terms of the development of the COVID in the country. And this fact brings a lot of uncertainty to 2020, 2021, and maybe even 2022. And as you know, I mean, any system is under risk whether its weakest part of the chain. And therefore, if even one country in the world, I mean, being in the center of Europe or in Africa or in Latin America, will not solve the issue of pandemics, it will be very hard, to tackle it globally, because we will just restart again with development in the world. And so this is very much important. How it affected in general COVID, how it affected the global economy. As I said, I already spoke about this many times. So we see several important things. First is uncertainty, and but we track the even high frequency indicators. They are very volatile in the world. And I mean, again, as I said in the beginning, I'm not quoting any new figures of the fund. I'm just speaking about the figures which have been disclosed in end of June. But by end of the 2020, the fund forecast, the IMF forecast, the slowdown of the global economy, something like by 4.9%, maybe a little bit better, but and this is already like by 1.9% worse than it was forecasted in April when pandemics already started. And I'm just want to remind you that in January, the IMF was forecasting the growth of the economy by 3.3%. So as you see, the drop of the economy is very, very, very big. And I mean, one good news in the presentation of Sergei, you will see the three scenarios of the global slowdown, from pessimistic to super pessimistic. And I may only say that IMF looks at the situation more positively than pessimistic scenario. So what is the problem with this slowdown? I mean, there are two important problems, and probably I will be closing here, to the, and we will be open to the questions. First, this is a synchronized slowdown. And because it's going, the slowdown we see both in the advanced economies and also in emerging markets. So this year, by end of this year, 180 countries are forecasted to show the decline of the GDP. This is unprecedented, because even during the global financial crisis of 2007, 2009, the countries of the advanced economies showed the recession, but at the same time, emerging markets like China, India, South Asia in general were growing. China was growing like 8%. Now China will grow like 1%. Maybe, as I said, these are figures of end of June. And the second big problem of this synchronized slowdown is that it goes not only, the slowdown is not only in industries, but also in service. And again, on the level of the corporations and also on households, in the investments, and then also in consumption. And especially in consumption is a pretty worrying signal in general. I mean, yes, now in the last few months, we see some kind of recovery, but by far not on the level of pre-crisis. So because the consumption, historically, the consumers during the crisis, during the slowdowns, they usually take their savings, and try to spend it, they go and buy. And usually the consumption during the crisis helps, household consumption helps to recover, and recover fast. Yes, we see, and you will see it from the slides of Sergei, that this is the fact. So we see this reviving of the consumer consumption, but at the same time on a much lower speed than was than would be needed, and therefore it creates a big shock for the aggregate supply, aggregate demand. Sorry, and I think that you will see it, unfortunately, also from the bank's credit decisions, because the banks will reevaluate their credit models very soon, if they have not done it yet. So if you compare the forecasts, of different agencies, of the fund forecast of April with what you will see in 2 weeks, definitely nobody says about a V recovery, a V-shaped recovery, or U recovery. You know, the consensus model now is a Nike or swoosh model of recovery. So it means that the virus definitely will be managed. You know, pandemics will definitely be managed. When, we don't know. It will probably be not soon, but will be done anyway. And there will be several waves. Not the second wave is not the last one, and definitely many sectors will have a long-term structural damages. And here I come back to the, you know, what I said about the trends and your business models. I do hope you understand it. I do hope you spent these 6 months to understand how the COVID influencing your behavioral models of your customers, of your suppliers, how it affects your global value chains or your partnerships. You probably understood that you should not rely on one partner. Probably your global value chains or your value chain should not be so long. Probably you will shorten it. Some of the decisions will be taken on so-named onshoring, so moving your businesses or industrial capacities closer to your head offices and not making them so much dependent on the long-term, some kind of border controls. So all of these is very much important. And the last thing which I want to say here is, I mean, you may see and maybe a little bit puzzled that the capital markets in the world, they are growing, and Sergey will tell about that. And the fund looks at this as a big risk because there is a clear disconnection between the real economy, or as people say, about between the Main Street and Wall Street, between the real economy and the capital markets. In Ukraine, we don't have much of the capital market, so this is not a big problem for us. But you, since I'm sure you follow like Bloomberg, Reuters, and in your decision making, don't be puzzled with the situation that the capital markets showing the new peaks. And the last element, the global trade. The WTO data showed that the global trade changed 3.5% in the first quarter, and in annual term. And this is shows also the decreasing of the global demand and also the collapse in the international tourism and some, the disruptions in the global value chains due to the quarantine and lockdown. This was in the first quarter. Today, in the morning, WTO released the new data, and the global merchandise trade volumes in the second quarter declined by 14.3%. And the trade contraction is sharper than 10% drop, which has been recorded during the financial crisis between the third quarter of 2008 and the first quarter of 2009. So as you understand, these factors, so the high uncertainty, synchronized and deeper the slowdown in the different regions and sectors, disconnection between the real economy and the capital markets, the problems of international trade, all of these factors together make this crisis, as the fund says, the crisis like no other. But at the same time, as I said in the beginning, this crisis has not changed the global trends. So if you are feeling well, living through these trends, if you feel well, your business model is well fine-tuned to meet these global challenges, I'm sure your business will be on a good stage, and will see the opportunity from this crisis. I wrote an article in end of February about the businesses which might be winners in the crisis. The recent FT article on this topic showed that I got like 100%. I was right, like 100%. I do hope your business among this group of companies. And let me stop here. Thanks a lot.
Good morning, Vladislav. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Vladislav, thank you very much for your great speech. You covered a very interesting topic from global trends, strategy, education, corporate social responsibilities, yes, and also about next steps and about your vision. Before our conference, when we sent invitation to our partners, we ask our partners to ask you to prepare questions for you, and we received some questions. And I would like to ask you the first questions which we received from our partners. What expectation about hryvnia FX rate next year? What do you think about?
No, as I said, as you might know, I spent several years working in the national bank, and one of the first targets which I put for myself, and also even was criticized for these public statements on this, was that I dream about the moment when people in Ukraine will stop asking about exchange rate. So I see that there is a lot of jobs still to be done in this direction. But I would answer the following: the exchange rate in Ukraine will be floating. This will be flexible, and as you know, the exchange rate is not a target for the central bank. This is just one of the variables. And this variable is helping to absorb also the shocks. Because if there is a shock in Ukrainian economy, is feeling worse than the competitors with our trade partners, it should devaluate. The exchange rate should devaluate. If we feel better, it should revaluate. So this is how it will go. I don't see any capital controls on the horizon, and I'm sure that the central bank will manage the situation very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Vladislav, for your answer. Next question. What do you think IMF could do help poorest countries in current environment? And what programs other than CBA could be relevant in your view?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I'm happy that people in Ukraine think beyond the Ukrainian borders. I speak very often with the CEOs of the companies in Ukraine, and again, we'll be happy to do it in more detail next time when I come to Kiev. The fund, as you could have seen from the news of the fund, the funding launched the several important products, which was a RFI, Rapid Financial Instrument, and RCF, Rapid Credit Facility. And from early April, or from, let's say, late March or early April till early August, the fund gave about 72 new, or launched around 72 new programs to help mostly the low-income countries and developing economies. Ukraine is not low-income country, believe me, many people in Ukraine criticize the local economy, and you should know that Ukraine is a good, average, mid-sized, small, maybe small, open economy. Definitely, maybe you don't understand how bad economies could be. If you have read the book of Ryan Hosling, The Factology, you may see what does mean the $1 economy, $2 economy, $4, $16 economy. So believe me, Ukraine by far is not the low-income countries. So second, the low-income countries, they have their own problems. Not only linked with just lack of funding to meet the crisis, which again the fund is helping, together with other countries, and not only in funding but also with kind of debt reliefs, which the fund was promoting together with World Bank and also G20. And actually, the majority of the countries, low-income countries, they managed to postpone or delay the debt payments for a certain period of time. We also provide a lot of the technical assistance to these countries. But exactly low-income countries appeared in this situation in a much worse situation than advanced economies or even emerging markets, just because, the capacity of also internet. If we can speak together with you easily through internet, and the kids can study online if needed, in Sudan or in Niger, believe me, it's not so easy, because only like 8% of households have the permanent access to the electricity. So it's not about internet, it's about electricity at home. So, I mean, here, you know, the fund also is trying to help, and while, you know, and World Bank is working a lot in order to, you know, to facilitate the programs of infrastructure development in these countries.
Thank you, Vladislav. Thank you very much for your answers. And I know you have a lot of different conferences after us. Thank you for your time. You find time for us, for our partners. And
there is a in the slide of Sergey, there is a one slide on low income, low interest for long, and I should tell you that I'm just switching now to the board meeting on exactly this topic, on the low interest for long.
It's great. It's great.
And again, Baram, thanks a lot. Sergey, thanks a lot for inviting, and we'll be happy really to continue this our fruitful cooperation. And I know that you are the great partners for your customers in Ukraine. But no, I mean, not only in Ukraine. As I said, the award of the best corporate bank is definitely, you know, is a well recognized effort of yours.
Thank you, Vladislav. Thank you very much. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you receive a lot of important, useful information. Before I invite Sergey, I would like to ask you, please ask questions. Please write your questions on chat. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergey Yagnich.
Dear friends, dear customers, dear partners, I hope that you are safe these days. Thank you so much for joining our humble discussion. Thank you, Janina, for giving me the floor, and many thanks to Vladislav, who delivered excellent speech. And here I must do some advertising. Vladislav mentioned the Telegram channel. 6 articles to read, and I encourage you to join this excellent channel to gain some nice deep insights in various topics. Now I would start with a small presentation. So I'm going to show you several slides which basically describe the state of the global economy, and I will start with my opinion on the COVID situation. And here I believe that the key element of understanding of the future path of the COVID is vaccination. So you can see some statistics, and I must mention that more than 40 types of various vaccines are being tested during these days, and I would be very happy to see the growing number. You can see that on the green part of the vaccination progress, there is still 0, and I would be very happy to see one at least or more positive figures on this list. So hopefully vaccines will be not only positively tested, but they will be widely available as early as possible. Speaking about potential second wave or the third wave, I must say that the picture across countries and regions is so dramatically different. Some countries and regions are still in the second wave. In some regions, the second wave is already declining. In some regions, there is a second wave, but increasing. In Ukraine, there is a first wave. So there's no second wave in Ukraine, but just the first wave, which is coming, and is coming in a season which is full with seasonal flu, etc. So definitely it will be a challenge to Ukrainian economy and more challenge to Ukrainian healthcare system. Again, the key idea of this information is that the only vaccine will be a game changer, and hopefully we will see the positive results soon. What essentially was happening in the global economy? So, following the full stop of the global economy, in particular in the services, these were the central banks which delivered fantastic coordinated policy response, which allowed us basically to mitigate in many ways the impact of this challenge. And I noticed several differences in how countries react to this challenge, and the evidence suggests that the more developed the country is, the more it is active in combating the COVID situation. So actually, developed countries, advanced economies, spend a huge amount of funds in order to tackle the situation. They also suffered the most pronounced losses. To speak about some figures, for example, the negative impact on U.S. economy only in 2020 is around 20% of GDP. Speaking in U.S. dollars, in 2019, U.S. economy recorded the record deficit of around just under $1 trillion. But can you imagine that in 2020 and in 2021 combined, the deficit of the US federal budget will be almost $7 trillion. Huge, absolutely huge amount. We will calculate the casualties for the fiscal side of advanced economies later. But the magnitude of the fiscal response is huge, and also the central banks, they play a very decisive role in the current environment. I also show you on the upper graph. I show you the combined balance sheet of key central banks. And during the last deep financial crisis of 2008-2009, there were calls, guys. You see the balance sheets, the aggregated balance sheets of key banks. They approach $5 trillion equivalent. Wow, that's a huge amount. Today we see that the key central banks, they will increase the size of their balance sheets from 15 to 25 trillion US dollars equivalent. So the massive intervention of central banks in order to keep interest rates low for some very, very protracted period of time. And we recently saw some more clarity, some more guidance from US Fed, saying that it would not target the inflation, but it would target the average inflation. It means that some period of time with already low inflation, they will take into account when making future decisions, and it is unlikely that global interest rates or US interest rates will be increased in some foreseeable horizon, at least not until 2023. So please keep your expectations of interest rates as low as possible. This, of course, creates various side effects in the market. So here I have two effects depicted. One of them is positive. And the positive impact of the very low interest rates and the very significant, very decisive interventions of central banks is that their actions helped to prevent the market stress. You can see the evolution of yields for the key regional Eurobonds, and you can see that Ukrainian yields, for example, were as high as 14% in US dollars. These are sovereign yields in March and April, and they went down to 6% following this massive injection of liquidity. So the country was able to attract additional financing from the global markets. So the same picture goes for other countries. You can see that the yields went down, they stabilized. In most situations, they are already lower than the pre-COVID levels. The second effect that I would like to discuss is the impact on equities. And as Vladislav said in his brilliant speech, there is a quite decoupling between the real economy and the stock market, which you can see on the very I would say nice and telling picture on the slide. You can actually see that that following the massive action of central banks, the equities went up. Not only equities, everything went up. So with this massive liquidity flow, and if you read the BNP Paribas latest global outlook, the Q4 global outlook, it says go with the flow. So basically, go with the flow of liquidity. So even if equities do not take into account a lot of growth in coming quarters, they still go up. The same goes for gold, for example. You could observe the very sharp increase in prices of gold recently, and that basically is a byproduct of having a lot of liquidity in a global financial system. And here I would like to return to risks which existed before COVID. As Vladislav said, basically COVID was not too much of a game changer. So many trends that existed before COVID, they just accelerated. And from the recent developments, we can see that the risks which are linked to Brexit, they essentially increased dramatically recently. And among other risks, I would mention the risk of continuation of US-China conflict, of course, subject to US elections that are to take place in November. But we should definitely expect more tensions, which are linked to trade and more recently to technology. So all risks which were on the table previously, that they will stay with us. They will stay with us in the next years. Speaking of potential scenarios of the impact of the COVID situation on the global GDP growth, here I take several scenarios from the sort of baseline scenario of no COVID to most pessimistic currently most pessimistic scenario. And the main difference between this scenario is vaccination. So I hope that that the vaccination will progress in the next year, and we will be seeing something between the scenario COVID-19 pessimistic one and provided some careful optimism, we will see global economy returning to normal levels in 2022 already. Speaking about Ukrainian situation, Ukraine was lucky on many fronts. So the COVID influenced Ukrainian economy, of course, and we saw a dramatic decline in GDP in the second quarter. But we also see that that this decline is maybe not matching most conservative estimates. So we have downgraded recently our GDP outlook for 2020 and left almost unchanged the view for the next year. But the key reason of downgrade was not a bad situation with the COVID. The key reason of the downgrade was simply a high reliance of Ukrainian economy on agricultural sector and the bad weather conditions in the agricultural sector that we saw earlier this year, allowing us to expect harvest not only below 2019 level, but also below 2018 level. Speaking about next year, I must mention it's more about mathematics, and we will see the sharp increase in Q2 next year. But it's not because the Q2 next year will be fantastic, but it is only the impact of the comparison based which basically takes into effect Q2 this year. So overall, we expect Ukrainian economy to be roughly at the level of 2019, somewhere in 2022, which exactly matches the expectations for the global economy. For domestic demand, we believe that the worst is already behind us. Also, as I mentioned, number of cases of COVID cases in Ukraine is increasing. We are just entering the first wave. The healthcare system was not tested by the first wave in the spring of this year. And we have yet to see the full impact of COVID, while the quarantine measures they already took the adaptive way. So we expect the regions to guide the opening and closing of shops, malls, etc., depending on circumstances. So in terms of domestic demand, we do not expect sharp acceleration this year. The Q4 will be difficult, but it will create a good basis for the next year. And again, we factor in some early successes in vaccination. For the interest rates, for the central bank, for the FX expectations, we factor in some weakness in local currency. You could have observed that recently Ukrainian hryvnia was slightly weaker on the interbank market. However, I must also underline that Ukrainian currency, when you say about the FX rate of Ukrainian currency, you normally say about the rate of hryvnia to US dollar. When you say about the rate of hryvnia to US dollar, you need to understand that US dollar is structurally weak currently. So US dollar suffered a lot from this decrease in interest rates. And essentially, we compare one weak currency versus another weak currency, and therefore we do not expect any sharp movements of Ukrainian FX rate. Fortunately, situation is well, and the only risk that I see in the near term that following the COVID, we saw the sharp increase in cash. And cash levels in Ukraine increased by almost 25% on year-to-date basis. And this basically tells that if sort of animal spirits are or will be changing in the street, there is almost a $4 billion of this increase, $4 billion equivalent in hryvnia, on hands of population, and they could quickly destabilize the cash FX market, and we have to see the potential policy responses done by Ukrainian central bank. As for the interest rate, we expect inflation to have found the floor recently, and in the next 2 months, inflation is likely to stay very low as well, in the range of 2 to 2.5%. There are some upward drivers in inflation, namely the increase in energy prices and also this gradual weakness of domestic currency. Also, I must mention the increase in minimum wage, which is to influence inflation in Q4 this year. However, against this backdrop, we do not expect any changes in the policy of central bank. So they're likely to keep the key rate close to 6%, which provides reasonable defense of the macro stability, and also it matches perhaps not current inflation, but it matches the outlook for inflation, and it matches the inflation expectations. So no surprises, hopefully from the monetary policy, and gradual weakness in the FX rate. Maybe some deeper information about external funding and the financial account. So there's amazing liquidity in the global markets. They allows Ukraine to attract funding to cover deficit of current account. But the good news is that there is actually no deficit in the current account. So Ukraine was again lucky in this performance. So the first factor is that metals and mining prices are much above the expectation. So nobody in the beginning of the year this year, nobody could expect the growth in metals and mining prices. So normally you see the collapse in prices when you see the full stop of economic activity, but due to very aggressive fiscal response in key economies, but also in particular in China, we see that the prices for iron ore they go up. And that coupled with lower energy prices, which is a bill for Ukrainian imports, and also coupled with limitations on tourism. And for Ukraine, tourism is an important negative component in terms of influence on services. So all in all, we see the positive development in the current account, and on top of that, international markets are quite positive. So summing up these factors, we see the record level of FX reserves observed in Ukraine, even without any additional disbursements on the side of IMF. So according to program, we should have seen the disbursement this September. So it didn't happen, but it doesn't change much the outlook, at least the short-term outlook for current and financial account. Finally, a concluding remark that one of the developments which were also above expectation, it was the remittances. Earlier this year, we drafted the decrease in remittances to $9 billion, and I was afraid that this forecast was too optimistic. However, provided the statistics that we see in the second quarter, in particular, we see the decline in remittances. Fortunately, it is not that dramatic, and that allows us to expect remittances in the full year on the level about $10 billion, which is again above expectations, and this also supports the outlook for the current account. So these are our key figures, key expectations. The presentations will be available following our discussion, and thank you so much again for being with us, and I do look forward your questions.
Sergey, thank you very much for your presentation. It's always perfect. Thank you very much for this. Of course, we have some questions for you we received before. Yes, our conference and the first questions provided massive global stimulus. Should we expect acceleration in global inflation rates?
Yes, good question, and the answer would be yes and no. Why yes and no? So essentially, when you print a lot of money, and that is exactly what global central banks did, so they had no choice. They printed almost 10 trillion USD equivalent. So when you have the massive outflow of liquidity into the system, the inflow to the system. So essentially now the question would be about the spare capacity that your economy has, and global economy has a plenty of spare capacity. So speaking about immediate impact on inflation, I do not expect any immediate impact on global inflation. Also, in US, policymakers, I mentioned about the switch of US Fed from targeting the inflation to targeting average inflation. So inside US, policymakers are a little bit worried about the impact on inflation. But globally, no. I do not expect the acceleration in inflation rates. However, what I do expect is the inflation of investment assets. And this is what is happening when I was showing the graph of increasing in equity prices. This is exactly the inflation of investable assets. So no inflation in the near term when we speak about the simple goods, but inflation of investment assets.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. Today we speak a lot about the COVID. Last month we speak a lot about COVID, and I think we need to speak about the future, yes, and also about the COVID. Next questions. When do you think Ukrainian's economy will fully recover from COVID stress?
Yeah, I would say never. Well,
thank you very much.
It will never be the same. It will never be the same. So it will recover. It is in a good track. Actually, the economy is not feeling bad. So it is in a good track. The external terms of trade are favorable, and we see that we found some floor in terms of domestic demand. So the way forward is up. Well, keeping in mind that there is still a first wave of COVID coming to Ukraine. So essentially, I would expect the economy to be on the same size. In the optimistic case, already in 2021, in the more pessimistic case in 2022. But again, the economy is changing. As Vladislav said, there is quite an acceleration of trends.
Okay, thank you. We have one additional question. Are you concerned about projected 2021 fiscal deficit in Ukraine?
Yeah, good question. Speaking about fiscal deficit, you can see that advanced economies they have larger fiscal deficit. So speaking about the fiscal deficit for 2020 and 2021, about the size of the deficit, I'm not concerned at all. So I can see economies which are running much larger deficits. But where I am concerned, it is not about the size of the deficit, but first is the use of deficit. So there is currently, I have a feeling that there is still a lack of understanding of how to spend money allocated to combat the impact of COVID. And B, I'm concerned about the funding sources of this deficit. As I said, key central banks, they printed a lot of money, and a big, I would say, seduction for the policymakers would essentially would be to do the same. So if US can print a lot of money, why cannot I print? And this will be a huge challenge, not only for Ukraine, but for the regional economy. So all authorities, they would try to repeat the Fed, to repeat this steps of ECB, and here the sources. So the deficit by definition is not bad. Once you know how to use it, for which purposes, and once you have reliable funding for this deficit. So I think funding would be the most important factor, and in this light, I underline once again the importance of cooperation with IMF and other international creditors.
Sergey, thank you very much for your presentation. I always like your presentations, a lot of information, interesting, useful. Thank you for your answers, and thank you for this event, because when we sent invitation to all our partners, we received all these questions about the Sergey and about his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. I think our online event was useful for you. And for the conclusion, I will glad to invite Dmitro Tsapenko.
Dear partners, colleagues, on behalf of Ukrbank, BNP Paribas Group team, I would like to say thank you for your interest and active participation in our conference. Of course, separate thank you to our speakers, Vladislav Rashkovan and Sergey Yagnich. So, new challenges and achievements await us, so let us go and get them. And see you soon. Thank you very much.
you.